Hi guys, it's Jennifer Thomas, and I've got another vlog for you. One that you guys have requested for a really long time actually is orchestration. I have been putting it off because it's kind of an involved topic, very nerdy and techy, and I have to be like sort of in the thick of a project to really explain how I do it. So I am doing that for you guys today because I am right in the middle of a few projects that I'm orchestrating. So if you're new to my YouTube channel and you have absolutely no idea who I am or what I do, I'm a pianist and composer and violinist. I'm also a mom of 3, and I work from my home studio, which is where I am right now. I also orchestrate a lot of my music. I produce it. I don't mix and master. That is a whole other art on its own. Yeah, so I have 4 albums out. I have done a lot of orchestrating. I've also done a few film scores and some commercial work. And you're probably wondering, how the heck do I know how to do this and what gives me any expertise to even talk about this? So, to give you a quick background on me, I started playing the violin and the piano when I was 5 years old, and I started playing in orchestras at the age of 7. And I kind of had a strict upbringing in music. My mom would have my brothers and I up at 6:30 in the morning to practice both of our instruments for a half hour each. Then we would go to school and practice in the grade school orchestra before school. And then finally we would go to school for a full day of school, and then after, when we got home, we would also go home and practice our instruments. So yeah, I had a great mom. She was very dedicated to my musical education. I'm so grateful for that. I also played in orchestras throughout my teenage years and all the way up to the university level. I played the violin in my university orchestra while I was also studying piano. And then after I graduated, I also I played in several chamber orchestras and symphonies. And this was all classical training that I had before I ever delved into my own music career. But that's my background. And so with that, playing in an ensemble, I was able to gain a lot of experience with harmonization and voicing and listening skills, which is really important. Something really basic, but knowing what instruments are in an orchestra and how many are in each section and what they do and what range they play in and what they're capable of and what they sound like. So playing in various symphonies over the years gave me a lot of experience with that, which was really helpful. Orchestration is something that's a little bit of a mystery. How do you do it? How do you harmonize? How do you know what instruments to use and where to put them? How do you know what software to use? How do you use the software? But for those who are here to actually get into the nitty-gritty, I hope I can do a somewhat decent job of showing you at least what I do. Everyone's process is completely different. So I'm just going to show you what I do personally. Okay, so welcome to my humble little workstation. So I kind of went over this in a different vlog when I was talking about film scoring, but I'll just kind of show you what my setup is. It's pretty simple. Behind me over here, I have a Kawai CN270 keyboard. So anything with like a keyboard instrument, that's what I use for that. And then on my desk over here, this is a Complete Control S61, which is a really amazing MIDI controller. I love having it on my desk because it's easily accessible. I can sit here and work and also, you know, work on orchestration or whatnot. And then I have a Yamaha I can't remember which Yamaha speakers they are. HS something, I don't know. This is just a PreSonus interface, and it connects MIDI cords, microphone cords, headphones over here, and then I have a microphone. So you're probably wondering, how do you orchestrate with only this? So it's not so much the hardware anymore that's important, it's the software. And so my beefy computer over here on the floor, which you can't see, has like a Mercedes-Benz worth of orchestrating software and everything. Okay, maybe not that much, but just to give you an idea. It contains all of the goods. So what you see here on the screen is what they call a DAWS, D-A-W-S, digital audio workstation, and there's all kinds of different ones. There's Pro Tools, there's Cubase, there's Logic if you're on a Mac. I personally use Sonar Platinum. I've been using this for at least 10 years, and It works really well for me, and because I've been using it for so long, I know like the ins and outs of it. And you kind of have to choose one that you want to stick with for like forever, because once you start using a certain DAW, you don't want to have all these files that's in that format and then switch DAWs and have to like convert everything over. Yeah, so when I orchestrate, I sit here for hours and hours and hours worth of work. So I'm going to try and not make this that long. Okay, so I know this isn't like the best setup, but I'm putting you here so that you can look over my shoulder as I work. Hopefully this works, and I'll zoom in if I need to. First, a little disclaimer. This is very rough, and I'm not even finished with this. Like, I'm like maybe 3/4 of the way, and then I'm not even, like, I haven't really gone through all the details yet. But it's a work in progress, and I wanted to use this as an example. Okay, so as you are looking at this, you can see these are all of my different tracks and different instruments that I'm using, and I labeled them over here. And usually how I begin orchestrating, usually my method is that I will compose the piano parts first and then build my orchestration around the piano. So that is, like I said earlier, that's a whole process unto itself. The first thing I do, like I said, is I have my piano track, and it's basically a clean slate, and I don't usually know what I'm going to do with it. But I usually listen through several times, and I'll often take notes on a piece of paper. Over here I have like all these papers on my desk that are usually notes for the song that I'm working on. And so I listen through the song like a zillion times, and I take notes of anything that I have ideas for. Like, for example, pizzicato strings between minutes 110 and 120, a big percussion hit at the 2-minute mark, or I'll have timestamps so I can make sure and go back, and so I know exactly in the song where I had like certain ideas. So in an orchestra, you have the string section, the brass section, the woodwinds, and percussion. This is just a personal preference, but I usually start with the violins first. Violin 1, there's 2 violin sections. There's the first violins and the second violins. And I usually start with the first violins first. And so I have several different sound libraries that I use for orchestra. This right here is a contact engine, which different softwares use different engines, and this one uses the contact player. And so you can see over here, these are some of the software libraries that I have that use contact. I have the Hans Zimmer London Ensembles, which is a percussion library. Alicia Keys is a piano library that I don't usually use very often. Vintage organs, West Africa, this is like African like percussion instruments. Retro machines, the gentleman. Okay, so the ones that I use the most, LADD is LA Dramatic Drums, which is also part of the LA Scoring Strings library. It's separate, but made by the same people. And then I have some amazing brass software, brass ensemble and brass solo. I have the Tina Guo solo cello, which is really amazing. Native Instruments Unicorda, which is like it's like a piano, but they put all kinds of things under the strings to mute it's super interesting. I have the Hans Zimmer Spitfire piano, and then I also have the Spitfire chamber strings and the LA Scoring strings. Some of these libraries were actually pretty affordable, and then some of them are pretty expensive. There's definitely some that I, waited to get to make sure I wanted to spend the money on them. One of those is the LA Scoring strings, and another one is the Hans Zimmer piano, and the Spitfire. Actually, anything from Spitfire is a little more expensive, but definitely worth the investment. And these are just some of the libraries. I also have a lot of stuff from East West, which is, they use a different engine called the Play engine, which is not my favorite, but it just doesn't handle the load as well as the contact players do. There you go. Over here is different libraries. I have Goliath, which is a bunch of drums. Gypsy has a lot of cool instruments. It has a really amazing solo violin if you ever need one of those. I have the Hollywood Strings Diamond Edition. Pianos. Raw has some pretty cool ethnic instruments. There's some Uilleann pipes from Scotland, and there's just a lot of cool like Celtic instruments in that one. Storm Drum 2, it's another like very cinematic percussion. Yeah, I guess it's mostly percussion. Yeah, percussion. And then I have symphonic choirs. And then I have another orchestra in here, the East West Symphonic Orchestra, which has, you know, everything from brass to strings to woodwinds and percussion. And then I also have the Voices of Passion, which is a vocal one. So another thing that is part of this whole process is deciding like what you're going to use a virtual instrument on and what you're going to use live instruments on. I tend to use, and this is very common, like actually most people do this, is to use a hybrid of both. There are certain really awesome things that sound libraries can do that you can't always replicate exactly with live instruments, and of course live instruments are the best. That's always like the first choice, and then you can also supplement with digital libraries. Just to kind of let you know my process, the song that I'm working on today I don't plan on using a real orchestra for, so I'm spending a lot of time really honing in on the strings and the various orchestra instruments for the song because I want it to sound really, really good. Part of doing orchestration with digital libraries is learning your instrument and figuring out how to make them sound great. I think some people have a misconception that you can just buy one of these libraries and push a note and then straight out of the box you'll get this amazing sound, and that is not usually the case. There's a lot of tweaking and combining, and editing is really key as well. Editing your modulation and your velocities and entrances and exits and just every little detail that makes up a really great sound. And strings are the hardest because I feel like if you don't get a really good string sound, it's like the biggest giveaway that you're using. I mean, it's the easiest thing that people can pick up on as being synthetic, and so you really want to take a lot of time on your strings especially. And if I still get to a point where I feel like I've worked on these and I still don't feel like they sound like a real orchestra to me, then I will record myself on violin and I will record several layers of overdubs and I will have those mixed in with the digital orchestra. And what that does, it just gives it like another dimension and a layer of authenticity on top of the digital orchestra. And you can also do this with any project. On the film score that I just finished a couple of months ago, I hired just like 5 or 6 violas and violins and had them overdub on top of the score, and then we mixed those in with everything else, and it was like, it sounded so incredible. It just made everything sound like really, really awesome. Okay, so back over here. I need you to focus over here for camera. So like I said, I usually start with the violins first. And one thing that is really time consuming is just figuring out like what sound you're going to use, because like I showed you, I have so many different libraries to choose from, and they all have hundreds of different articulations. When I say articulations, I mean like if you're playing the notes long or staccato, or you know, the different ways that all the different ways that you can play a note. Those are all articulations. So let me find my violin track. Let's see. There you go. So this is a MIDI track, and each one of these lines that you see is a note. And I'm going to zoom up on this so you can see it better. Okay, so this is a note, and this is what I put in with the modulation wheel, and this controls the dynamics of a note, and it also controls, sometimes in some different articulations, it controls the vibrato. This is my first violin section, and as you can see, like, these are 2 notes, you know, there's chords and different things being played. So when here, I'm gonna solo this really quick so you can listen. Okay, so one thing that's hard to do is when you're laying down tracks with the keyboard is if you're doing harmonies, like more than 1 note, it's kind of hard to play all at once. And so what I often do is I'll just lay one note line down, and then once I have that recorded, I will go into the piano roll, which you can see here. So you can see the keyboard over here. So each of these notes is a piano note. And I will go in here and basically listen through what I just did and add stuff. Now I'm going to play that with the piano part. My piano is so loud, I'm sorry. I'm going to turn that down. So in this view right here, you can edit. You can move a note, higher, lower. You can move a note. You can change the length of a note. You see that? You can change the velocity, which is how loud it is. So right now this one is at a 29. That can go all the way up to 127. And then the other thing that you can edit is the modulation, which is the most important thing in my opinion, which is all of this wavy stuff that you see. And you can draw this on. So if you see how this is really high over here, this note's going to start out really loud. So I'm going to play that again so you can hear that. Now I'm going to change this so that I'm going to change this so it's all the way down here, and you can hear the difference. Actually, even more. Compared to... Okay, but now I need to go back to how it was before. So I will spend a lot of time after I've laid notes down going and editing all of these modulation curves, because your entrances of a note and how they exit is a really big deal with strings, especially. Like I said, like when I'm laying down orchestration, I usually start with the violins, and a lot of it is just figuring out, sorry, I'm trying to focus on my face. A lot of it is just listening and re-listening and figuring out which harmonies work. For example, I will just start drawing in notes. You can draw notes in. You focus over here. See how you can draw notes in, and then you can go and edit them. This is how I usually do my harmonies, is I will just start drawing in different notes and trying them out, kind of like just auditioning. I'm auditioning notes for harmonization. And as I do this, I start, you know, adding things, and then I'm like, oh, that note doesn't sound good. I'm going to move it over here. And eventually, I get to a point where I feel like I have what sounds like a good first violin section. And let me just... So this is the piano and the first violins. Okay, so another thing that I do is that I will mix libraries together. So this, by the way, is the LA Scoring Strings legato violins in the arc section. The arc is a technique where they, first, second, third chair, divisi is called in different libraries. So I really like sound libraries that are full of mistakes. Like if it's too perfect, it sounds very synthetic. And so one library that I just bought actually is the Spitfire Chamber Orchestra. And just out of curiosity, I plugged in LASS and Spitfire together because I wanted to see how they would sound as a combination. LASS is an amazing library. The vibrato is a lot different than the Spitfire, and The Spitfire, because it's a chamber orchestra, the mic positions are different and there's less players as well, so you get a more close sound. And I basically, what I did was I took this track and I copied it and I pasted it down here to a new track. And then I, you know, I went through all my libraries and I decided which Spitfire strings I wanted to use for that. And they are coming up right now. So this is just one of the long legato violin patches in the Spitfire chamber strings. And I really like this one because you can adjust so many different things. You can adjust the dynamics over here. If you want, like this one, you can adjust the vibrato. If you want the vibrato to be slower or faster. The release, the speed, the tightness. The tightness is like how together you want the instruments to sound. If you want them to be like exact, or if you want them to like maybe vary their entrances a little bit or not be so perfect, which I really like. There's also round robin options, which if you don't know what round robin is, it's just so like every time you hit the note, it's not like a looped sound. You're actually getting different variations of that sound. And so they just kind of vary those. Sorry, I have a really squeaky chair. Okay, so putting those two libraries together, this is what I came up with. Okay, so if you heard some glitches in there, it's because I haven't finished editing this. And there are some modulation things I need to fix where it's just kind of like peeking out and then going under. That's another thing I can tell you is each library is different in how you edit. For example, the LA scoring strings are more forgiving. So for example, you can see over here how this note overlaps this. See how they're kind of on top of each other? And they blend really well when they're played. But I've been noticing with the Spitfire strings, let me go to that view, it doesn't have as much allowance for overlaps. And I think that's where I'm getting that glitch in my sound, because these two are overlapping and it's making a peak in the audio every time it changes notes. I actually think it was my LA scoring strings. But either way, I've got some editing to do to fix that. But I'm going to, with the piano. Okay. For all intents and purposes, I have a first violin section, even though I have some editing to do. Next, I will just usually go through the sections, so I'll add seconds, and then violas, and then cello, and then bass. Sometimes I like to start with the bottom instruments first, though, because it gives a better foundation of the sound, and then I can go back and fill in the middle part. So the next thing I did was I added legato cello. And I also have this really cool patch. I call it the Batman strings. Actually, that's what they're called, because they do double octaves. Let me just play those for you. Oops, let me mute my piano. Piano. And with violins. Okay. So the easy way to orchestrate is just to add a lot of long legato notes. If you want to start somewhere, that's the easiest thing to do. But once you get into more complex orchestration, you can start filling in holes with different shorter staccato like kind of notes, or pizzicato, or just things that you basically want to create a canvas of different textures that are all interwoven together. And so to give you an example of that, I made a track here with some staccato strings. I call them the Spider-Man violins. I don't know why I give things weird names sometimes, but I'll show you what I did with that. Focus. So I'm just muting and soloing tracks right now so you can hear. And with shorter notes like this, also something that is super helpful is quantizing, which is basically if you're playing like da 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 da, maybe you played it da 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 da, like you didn't do the exact timing of the note. You can go in and quantize it so that it will shift your notes to be on the beat better, which is really helpful. I personally find staccato and spiccato and marcato like the hardest to sound real in a digital orchestra. So again, I'll do a lot of combining of different libraries to get a sound. Another question I get a lot is, how do I know like what to add and what to put in next? And again, it's just a lot of listening and going back and listening to what you have so far and listening, trying to listen with an open mind and in fresh ears. Meaning if you've been working on it so long that you get sick of it, you don't know what to do, just go to bed and come back the next day, or give it a few days rest and come back to it. You usually get more ideas when you've stepped away from it. This track right here I've actually been working on for the last 6 months, not because it's taken me that long, but it's just I haven't had the time to fully focus on it all at once. But it's actually been really beneficial because now, like every time I come back to work on it, I'm like, oh, I have a new idea for this, or you know, what I did before was awful. I'm totally gonna change that. Oh, I forgot to show you. One thing I like to use in my music a lot is synthesizers. We call them synths. And I use a synth called Raw Peepin' Blue. And this honestly is what takes me so long when I'm working on projects, because there's, oh hold on, these are all the sound banks in this library. Not like just the sound, like each of these are banks of sounds. And so if I want to go through one, like I'll choose, like what do I have right now? I have digital bass. And then once you pick a sound bank, then you go through here and there's just like hundreds to choose from. So when I am going through synths, that's another thing that I really need to write down, because there's just hundreds of them to go through and I can't keep track of them. So I will just write down like every sound that I like and what bank it's in and what number it is. And I'll write them down, and then when I'm finished like going, I'm not kidding you, this can take me like hours going through these sound banks. And once I have a good list of like what I like, then I have to go through my list and then try them out with the song and see what works. Synths are great for example, in this song, I wanted a stronger bass line, so I added a bass synth that just goes underneath the piano. Because when you mix piano with orchestra, sometimes the lower end of the piano gets washed out a lot with all the orchestra. And so something that I'm actually just realizing and starting to do with some of my recent songs is adding a bass synth underneath the piano, because it helps sustain the longer notes. And so that's actually something I've got going on in this song, which again, this isn't mixed properly, but I'm just going to show you what I mean. If I can find my, where's my track? Here it is. Okay. You can hear how the bass synth went under the piano. And when I eventually get this professionally mixed, that won't be as loud. But when I'm orchestrating, I basically have everything like super loud so that I can hear everything. But yeah. Yeah, so I basically go through all of the string sections and I work on those and I get those laid down, and then I go through brass. I really favor brass. I love French horns, and then last of all I'll do woodwinds. I don't use a lot of woodwinds in my orchestration. If I do, it's like flute or bassoon, but there's so many more options. I don't know, maybe it's just the style that I do, but I use a lot of brass especially, which is why I also invested in a really great brass sound library, because I use it so often. Yeah, so then I just do that for each of the instruments, and honestly, like, the most time-consuming thing that I do is editing everything, because that's really where you perfect the tracks and you make them as good as they possibly can be. And again, like, let me show you the French horns. Okay. This is my French horn track. So again, when I laid down this track, I just did one French horn, and then I went back and I added the different layers and the different harmonization, and then I went back and edited the velocities, and then I went back and I edited all the modulation. And this is what I spend the most time on, because again, this is what makes the ebb and flow of the vibrato and the velocities and makes it sound like a real instrument. And for like French horns, the higher you get up here, you get that more brassy, rumbly sound that you heard. Like if I start here where it's lower, and watch when it gets like right here. Okay, so like I said, this is a redo of one of my older songs from my first album, and I just kind of wanted to show you a difference in the sound. So this is actually the original track off of my original album, and I'll play you a little bit of this. Let me fast forward a little bit. You'll hear the orchestra come in here in a second. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear, but to me, it sounds so synthetic. There's not very much modulation or velocity difference or dynamics or vibrato. It's all just like if I hit a note on the keyboard and it went ba, like it just is like a looped, sustained sound to me. Even though 10 years ago I was still using the East-West Symphonic Orchestra for this, I just wasn't as knowledgeable on how to really utilize it and edit and make it even better than it was. And then now, years later, I mean, things are just so much better. It's just crazy. So I'm going to now show you what I've done with it. You're getting like a little bit of a sneak peek. I'm going to skip. I put an entirely new introduction on the song, so I'm going to skip that part and just get to basically where that is. So hold on. So I just put the drums in there last night and they're horrible. I haven't finished editing them yet, so I'm going to mute them. And they're super loud, so, and kind of annoying. Let me try that again without drums. Sorry, my piano is turned way down in the mix, but again, when I'm working on stuff, I usually raise the levels up high just so that I can hear everything. But when this is eventually professionally mixed and mastered, like, everything will have its own sonic space. You know, things will pop out here and there, but it won't be like the full kitchen sink like you just heard. But yeah, and like I said, this is still a work in progress. I still have a lot more to do on this. One of the next steps I'll do is go through and basically cherry pick what I do want in there and what I don't, and I'll take out the things that I don't. After this, all of this MIDI track, all of these MIDI tracks will then be exported as audio files, and then I have to go through and edit all the audio files, which is even a more, for me, it's a more detailed edit, because even though I can edit a lot in here, like, tremendously, when I added the audio files, I can see the waveforms and I can adjust crossfading and fade-ins and fade-outs. And once I've finished editing all of the audio tracks, then I do a final export of all the audio in 24-bit and 44.1 sound, and I send those files to my mixing engineer, and then he goes and mixes them all. Yeah, like I said before, I don't trust myself to mix or master. It's an art that people have spent years learning to do, and that's why I use my amazing mixing engineer, Brian Viberts. He has won 5 Grammy Awards for what he does, and it's very apparent why. He just does really amazing work, and when I send him like my mess of like 100 tracks, he sends them back to me like so crafted and so, like, I like to call it sparkly. He just adds a sparkle to it. He adjusts EQs and reverb levels, and also voicing. He does a lot with voicing and bringing out things. And yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it. In case you didn't read on my Facebook a while back, I'm working on a new album. I'm finishing up a couple projects between now and June, and then I'm going to Paris in June for my birthday. I'm gonna go see Hans Zimmer live. I'm so excited. With my husband. It's like a romantic birthday trip, which I'm super stoked about. After Paris, we have a family vacation, but basically after that, I actually postponed several projects and canceled some things because I just really need to focus on writing my new album. But this new album that I'm going to be doing, I am going to be recording with a Real Orchestra, and so you're probably wondering, like, what is the difference in process? And basically, I do exactly the same thing that I'm doing right now, but then instead of just sending all of my audio tracks to a mixing engineer, I would then send the MIDI files to a transcriptionist who then takes it and makes it into readable sheet music for musicians. And then I have a live orchestra record the parts. And then once we get all those tracks back, we mix those with the digital tracks, and yeah, and then we make an awesome mix. So a really great resource for anyone who's just starting out is, sorry, trying to get this to focus on my face. A good resource is, you can, on East West, you can order the Composer Cloud, which comes with like a variety of different orchestration software, which I think you just pay per month, and you can use that. It's a good place to start. It gives you access to orchestra, brass, you know, woodwinds, like everything that you could possibly need to orchestrate. That's a really good place to start, and then from there, like I said, like, I've expanded and I have a lot of different libraries. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. It's kind of a time-consuming process, but I really enjoy it. In fact, when I get to the part of orchestrating my music, that's actually what I really, really love to do, and it's what really creates the whole sound of a song. Now my kids are knocking at my door telling me I'm done already. I gotta go. So I hope this was somewhat helpful to you. If you liked it, I would love a thumbs up and a subscription to my channel if you would like to do that. I have music videos and vlogs and yeah. Thanks. Oh, and I'm also on Patreon because that is how I do all of this, at least the video part. I have amazing patrons who help support my endeavors to make music videos. So feel free to check me out there. Alright, have a great week guys. Until my next vlog, which I have no idea when that will be.